Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, Make Believe Storytime. My name is Beatrice, and in today's video I am bringing you another inspiring interview which is part of our series called What Do You Want to Be When You Grow Up?, dedicated to preteens and teens. These interviews are designed to offer you an interesting way of learning about a number of different career paths and jobs, some traditional, some less so. In our previous episode, I spoke to nurse in training Eloise Clark. We talked about what being a student nurse entails, how she came to the realization that nursing is the career she would like to pursue, what are the most challenging, and also what are the most rewarding aspects of the job. If this sounds like something that may interest you, then please do check out that video as well. You can find it at the link in the description box below. In today's interview, we are returning to the world of community work, and we are going to be speaking to somebody from the voluntary sector. Today's guest is a young carers support team leader at the Richmond Carers Centre. Tom Humphreys' team works to provide young carers with vital information, emotional support, and to connect them with a community of young carers. We will be talking about what it's like working in the voluntary sector, how one may find themselves on such path, and also about the many facets of what it can mean to be a carer. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited for our chat. Lots of good stuff to get into today. So we're going to start with the beginning. And I wanted to ask if you can tell us who you are, who is Tom and what do you do for a living?
Of course, yeah. So I'm currently living and working in the borough of Richmond upon Thames in London. And the organisation I work for is an organisation called Richmond Carers Centre. So we are an organisation that's kind of dedicated, and our kind of main aim really is to support unpaid carers of all ages within the borough. And I guess how I fit into that organisation, my official job title is Young Carers Team Leader, Young Carers Support Team Leader. And my role is to really oversee our young carers team, and we're dedicated towards supporting young carers from the age of 5 right up to the age of 18 who may be kind of actively caring or may just be impacted upon in some way by having someone in their family or a loved one that they lived with who potentially has a medical condition, or it could be a physical disability, it could be a mental health condition. And what we do as an organization is look to kind of ease that burden a little bit, really. So we provide a kind of wide range of support, from emotional support to respite support and peer support as well with other young carers. But really, we're very aware of the impact that has and the responsibilities of caring has. And what we do is hope to kind of make life a little bit easier by providing support, hopefully on a kind of daily and weekly basis.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
that. And so it's very clear to me that caring has many aspects.
Mhm.
Often when we think of caring, we probably think, or at least I did, I thought of carers who work as a carer
Of course.
rather than
Mhm.
unpaid carers. So it's really interesting to learn more about people who sort of fall into this position just because of their
Mhm.
circumstances. So I was wondering if you could now maybe describe in a bit more detail what it means to be an unpaid carer, especially for a young person, and maybe some of the responsibilities that you've noticed some of them have as a
Mhm.
carer, and then we can maybe describe a little bit what it's like being a paid carer. I know you don't necessarily work with that, but it'd be nice to have that comparison.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's a really important kind of thing you pointed out there. I think that's kind of a common thing. When you mention the word carer, I think the majority of people instantly go to those who are kind of paid, and they do it as a job. So they're going into homes and kind of supporting family members, to help look after those who maybe need that additional support. But when you think about it, I think if you look in between those moments when paid carers are maybe going into the home, because they may not be there all the time, they may be kind of time limited, So in between that, as you can imagine, that kind of care and responsibility often falls on those who are closest to the people with the additional needs. So for us and our team, like I said, we work with young carers. So that's anyone from the age of 5 to the age of 18 before they hit adulthood. And quite often, young carers, I think even with the word young carer, there's a common misconception. I think people, in terms of the connotation around the word carer, people instantly go to physical care, which I think is quite a common thing. So when you think
Yeah.
carer, you think maybe a young person is helping mum or dad kind of get dressed in the morning, or is helping with kind of physical needs around the home, which is quite often the case, and certainly takes place. But actually, we're very aware of as an organization, as we work with young people who do have those caring responsibilities, that our impact is a lot wider than that. It's not just kind of the physical caring responsibilities. It can take a real emotional toll on young people, because quite often what they're doing is they're taking on the responsibilities that we would often expect adults to take on.
Oh,
So
right.
quite often, we'll have that initial conversation with the family, and what you'll find is that, as a kind of an example, really. So say we are working with a family who the parent has a physical disability that kind of limits what they're able to do. Maybe it's around the home, or even just something simple like going and doing the shopping and those kind of things. And because the parent is maybe unable to do it, or to do it as much as they'd like to because of those limitations, as you can imagine, that sometimes falls on the young person to maybe do that. So quite often, when it comes to kind of child development and young people learning and growing up and learning who they are, some of that stuff kind of falls by the wayside, because the responsibilities of looking after the family member can sometimes be overwhelming, or can take over those things. So as an
Yeah.
example of what young carers may do, they may be doing physical care. So quite often they are kind of helping. It could be a family member get dressed in the morning, or do the chores around the home, or go in and doing the shopping and things like that. But also there's a lot of emotional support for young carers. So if you can imagine, a real kind of hot topic for young carers at the moment is caring for someone with a mental health condition. Something that's quite prevalent in society at the moment, particularly in the last sort of 12 months with everything that's gone on. So young carers are often relied upon to kind of provide that emotional support to a family member. And if they're feeling down, or if they're feeling depressed or anxious or stressed or worried, it quite often falls on a young person, maybe as young as 5, maybe as young as 6, 7, 8, really, really young, to provide that emotional support, or pick up a family member when they're feeling a little bit low and a little bit down, which is a lot of responsibility for a young person to take on. But like you
Absolutely.
said, most young carers often kind of fall into that. So another big issue we face in terms of young carers, and what life is like as being a young carer, is it's really hard for young carers to self-identify themselves as carers, because like you said, it's quite often just something they've always done. It's kind of caring for a family member, which a lot of us do. We love our family members, we love
Yeah,
those
of course.
closest to us. And what young carers do is just kind of see that as an added responsibility, and don't necessarily recognize that sometimes their life is a little bit different to their peers. So
Yeah.
they
I
don't
was going
necessarily
to,
go on.
sorry
Sorry.
to stop you. I was
Hmm.
going to actually say that it's if
Hmm.
that's the only really reality they know,
Hmm.
they're not going to question it,
Of
because
course.
it's what they've always, like you said, it's what they've always had. So for them, that is the reality that they've had to live with every day. So I don't think they question it probably until much later on, when they start to become aware that actually
Mhm.
not everyone I know does this. And
Yeah,
um,
of course. As you become more self-aware as you get older, so that's really the kind of point. Yeah, I was leading on to, is quite often we won't see young carers until the age of maybe 13, 14, 15, start to recognize that, oh, I'm not able to go and see my friends as often as some of the other young people at school, or I'm not able to spend as much time doing things socially, or get along to social clubs, or the responsibilities I'm taking on at home are having a real impact on what I do at school, and being able to concentrate on homework and those kind of things. So until a young carer often becomes a little bit older, they don't necessarily recognize their life as any different, which, as you can imagine, then kind of poses the problem of, well, who is supporting them through that age? When an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old is maybe taking on the responsibility that we'd sometimes even expect of adults, or older family members, who
yeah,
is guiding them through that? And when it does kind of have an emotional impact, or they may be late to school or miss a school day because that kind of stress and responsibility that's impacting their home is playing a part on how they get along to school, or how they're able to concentrate at school. who is there to kind of guide them through that and help them through that. And that's kind of where our organization come in, really,
Mhm.
is hopefully to kind of give them that guidance. So there's two real key elements of the support we provide. One bit is kind of respite and activity opportunities. So quite often it can be really, really difficult for young carers to get along and even just go and see friends after school or go around to a friend's house and have that kind of social interaction, which young people find really, really important when it comes to child development. And what we do is we provide those opportunities, but not just with any young person, but with other young carers that they may identify with. So young carers often feel like I said, because they don't necessarily identify their life being different, they feel like maybe they're the only ones who are dealing with those challenges. So who am I going to go to talk about that, and who am I going to go to ask for help when I need it? So what we can hopefully do is provide them with an environment where they get to spend time with other young carers who they identify with and who understand what they're going through. So if they want to talk through it, because as we have very skilled workers who are able to kind of guide them through that, also what's really, really important is they're able to kind of recognize themselves in other young people and other peers who are going through the same thing, and they can help support each other as well. So that's kind of one key element of our support. The other key element of our support is the emotional side. So I talked a lot about kind of the emotional impact that being a young carer can have on a young person's life. What we do is we provide mentoring support, we provide regular support to kind of parents and family members as well, and help kind of talk them through, when a young carer is feeling really frustrated by the fact that they're not able to go and see their friends, or they're really worried when they're at school all day, and how is the cared for, or the dependent, as we'd often refer to them, how are they coping while I'm not there? And that's really, really difficult then to kind of focus on schoolwork and building and maintaining friendships and all those kind of really important things when it comes to a children's life. So what we do is we provide mentoring support with some of our really kind of talented workers who are able to kind of help guide them through that and really kind of give them that resilience to cope, and really give them the tools and mechanisms to get through those periods that they find them more challenging or maybe kind of impacting on them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's extraordinary. I think that's so important. And you don't really think, unless you're in that situation, what kind of impact this can
Mhm.
have on your development as a young person. And I have a very good friend of mine who, when we were in university, she was a carer for her mother, and she had been a carer all through college. I don't know when it started. I think when she was a teenager, her mother started to have some sort of health problems and was in and out of hospital a lot.
Mhm.
And I didn't really understand. Um, I mean, I try to, of course, but now when you put it into context, it's really interesting to kind of, it's almost like a veil was taken off for me, because I understood actually the amount of pressure that she was under, and how much that affected, her college work and later on her university work, and trying to have a job and go to university and be a carer all at the same time. I think, she's a superhero.
Yeah, of course.
So
And no, and I think that's a really important point because it's really hard, right? And us as an organization, we do a lot of work around awareness raising and making sure that people are aware of what are considered young care related issues, what they go through on a daily basis. And I think we've been provided with a little bit of a unique opportunity over the last 12 months, in the sense that the best way I can describe it to people when you're trying to kind of put yourself in the life of a young carer and what that must feel like, if you take the last 12 months since the pandemic has hit and kind of consider all the issues we've all been facing, and we've had this kind of shared experience around isolation from our friends, isolation from our family members, or not being able to access the support mechanisms we would usually be able to access, and all those kind of things that we've all been struggling with a little bit in some cases, and we've all felt that to a certain respect. That's what life is like for young carers, kind of under normal circumstances as well. And what the pandemic has done is kind of increased that impact for young carers, because as you can imagine, being away from
of
school and
course.
taking on more responsibility and all that kind of thing. But I think what might be an opportunity for us as society really to kind of really take stock. And when we're thinking about, okay, what do young carers deal with on a daily basis, well, let's have a look at the last 12 months and look at what we've been feeling and everyone's been feeling a little bit. And that's a little bit of an idea of kind of what life is like for young carers, often not being
Yeah.
able to go and see friends, not being able to do the social clubs we'd like to, or not being able to access school, which is often the only opportunity they get to have a break from their caring role as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a real kind of, like you said, it's almost like a veil or a curtain's being opened to kind of see, okay, we get it now. And I think it's important that we recognize that the young carers, that they're an amazing group of young people, and I feel incredibly privileged to be in the position I am to work with them, because they amaze me with their resilience every day, and with the right type of support they can go on to do incredible things in life, much like any young person. But also it's important that they do get that support, and it's really difficult to put that in place if we're not able to identify them quickly enough. And hopefully we can do a little bit better in identifying them earlier, because like I said earlier, does sometimes get to a point where maybe they've been coping with this for such a long time, and it would have been so beneficial for them to have a little bit more support earlier. So hopefully if we can get in a little bit earlier, then we're able to kind of guide them through that, and help them kind of understand themselves and where they fit in the world as well as they grow up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I was going to say exactly the same thing, that I think that's really important to try and well, I'm sure you know this because you work in the field, but my conclusion is that I think awareness is really important, because the more people are aware, then young people who may be in this position will be able to self-identify a lot
Mhm.
sooner if it's already something that's being talked about, rather than something that's only in a certain group, or it's
Mhm.
only certain people know about, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? If it's
Yeah.
something that we generally talk about and know about, then
Mhm.
surely, like you were saying, it'll be much easier for them to self-identify and sort of try to find some sort of support. Or their families, if they are
Mhm.
very young,
Mhm.
might start to think, actually, this is our situation, this is what
Mhm.
we're going through, so let's
Yeah.
see, who or what organization we can
Yeah.
access support from.
Absolutely, and I think it's about giving them the confidence to come and ask for help, because I think it's a little bit of an issue that we all face to a certain extent, isn't it? Is being comfortable with the idea of going and saying, actually, I'm finding things really difficult at the moment, and I'd quite like a little bit of help. And I think if young carers are unaware of themselves as young carers, or that visibility isn't there within kind of the right settings where they go, actually, that sounds a little bit like my life, and I'd quite like a little bit of help from time to time. But if that visibility isn't there, they're not going to know who to go to, or have the confidence to come and go. If I tell you, and if I open up to you and say, look, I'm finding things really difficult at home, I have all these responsibilities, and I'm finding the balance between, I don't know, schoolwork or building friendships and my responsibilities at home a really difficult one. It's about them being able to have the confidence that if they do that, then someone is going to respond positively and understand where they're coming from, and then take action to help kind of improve things as well. But at the moment, we're not quite where we need to be. I think it's getting better, and slowly but surely, we're certainly improving awareness. But there's still a long way to go to make sure the young carers feel like they're able to identify themselves. And if they do
Mm,
come and ask for help, then they can be confident that someone will be there to help them through it as well.
absolutely. And so then that's obviously one side and one
Hmm.
one facet of caring, and then we also have the profession of
Hmm.
caring, where you
Hmm.
are a professional carer and that's what you go and do. So
Hmm.
if you could maybe describe for those who don't know much about this, just in a few words, what it
Of
means
course.
to be a professional carer.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting question, because there are, although a lot of the responsibilities they're taking on, unpaid carers or a paid carer, are very, very similar often in most cases. Actually, there is a big difference as well. If you think of yourself as a paid carer, much like any job, quite often you will go through periods of training in order to kind of make you qualified to kind of fill that job. So paid carers will have gone through, numerous kind of training and years of training to make sure that when they do kind of take on that role, and they go into homes and they help care for these vulnerable people, that they are qualified and have the knowledge and know how to be able to do it. Now, the difference is for kind of young carers and unpaid carers, they are often taking on those responsibilities, but without the kind of training or kind of qualifications that come along and kind of give you that confidence to do that on a daily basis, without it maybe impacting on you emotionally as much. Obviously, it's an incredibly tough profession. I think we've all become aware, particularly again over the last 12 months, of just how difficult a profession it can be, and it's monumental the work the paid carers get through. But if you then consider unpaid carers who are doing it for family members and loved ones, because they do love them and they want the best for them, and often they're the only people who can, they had also taken all that kind of responsibility on without that kind of background of training and knowledge and know-how, and I guess the support network of working with other paid carers who
Yeah.
understand kind of, and people you can go to and go, oh, I had a really tough day at work today, and I'd love to kind of get a couple of things off my chest and ask, for a little bit of support or advice from people who share the profession you're in. And paid carers quite often don't have that support network and don't have that training to kind of help them and build that resilience to cope with the impact it has on them. So it's incredibly tough, and quite often, young carers go on into adulthood and continue with that caring role and become, unpaid carers. But yeah, I think that's the kind of real key difference, and why organizations like ours hopefully kind of ease that burden a little bit, is quite often they're doing it for a family member without any of the kind of training you'd expect any person to get who's taken on that responsibility. So yeah, that's why there's organizations such as kind of Richmond Carers Centre and all across the UK who can hopefully kind of support them through that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Because I think without the training, as you were saying, especially, I think it's probably with certain sort of physical illnesses
Mhm.
as well. But one thing springs to mind, or sprung to mind when you were describing what young carers go through, is if, the parent or whoever they're caring for suffers from mental health.
Mhm.
I mean, we all we're all in mental health. We
Yeah,
all
of
have mental
course,
health. But I mean,
absolutely.
if it's
Yeah.
something that's a bit more severe or serious
Mhm.
and they don't really know how to deal with it, I can see why that can be extremely difficult and painful, because they don't have any of the mechanisms, to
Mhm.
deal with that particular scenario or situation, or
Mhm.
so it's incredible that there are organizations
Mhm.
like the one you work for, and so many others that are doing this work, because I think it's really, really important for these young people to have support. It'd be easier for them to do this, and the burden would be a little bit
Mhm.
less, hopefully, if they
Of
have this sort of
course, absolutely.
support.
And you think of even kind of professionals such as myself who work with young carers and our incredibly dedicated team and paid carers. Everyone who works within sort of the voluntary sector or the health and social care sector, we have kind of numerous and kind of training sessions and opportunities for kind of peer training and all this kind of things that help us have those conversations. So if we are going to go into a home and do a home visit with someone who has a severe mental health disorder that's impacting on their life, which can be a really challenging conversation to have, we have that training and know-how that allows us to kind of
Mm,
deal with that situation in the
yeah,
appropriate way. For a young person who has to have those conversations with a family member or a sibling or a mum or dad, it can be a really kind of scary thing to do, and not to know who to go to kind of ask for help with that, and just to kind of, I guess, find your way through it. And over time, hopefully kind of learn how to kind of cope with that. But yeah, that's why I guess organizations such as our own are so important for them, because we're quite often the only service who kind of support directly with carers around their experience and understand where they're coming from. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a really, really rewarding and privileged position for us to be in, but at the same time, we've got a long way to go, and I think we're kind of dedicated towards working towards kind of everyone has a at least a base level understanding of what carers are going through on a daily basis.
And that brings me actually to my next question, which is, how did you end up on this path and in the position that you are in now at the organization you're working for?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the nice things, I think there's generally within the voluntary sector, which is where an organisation as ours kind of fits, or the charity sector, as some people may kind of refer to it, is it tends to attract a real kind of varied, group of people, and quite often, even within our own team in the Young Carers Service, there's a real eclectic mix of different backgrounds and different areas of work and where we've come from, where our experience is. And that's a really lovely environment to be in, because it always means that someone is always bringing something new to the table or something different, and a different background. And I think that's something that's, I guess, I like to think is true for myself as well. So much like yourself, Beatrice, my background is in theatre and performance and drama. So from the age of kind of 16, really, from the moment I went to college, I took a BTEC in performing arts, and it was all at that age, all I wanted to do. I loved performing, loved being on stage, loved singing, loved acting. It was a real kind of passion of mine. and then even kind of moving into university as well. I did a degree in drama. So for a good kind of, I guess, 5, 6, 7 years, all I did was performance. That's all I wanted to do. And still to this day, really love it. Go to the theatre regularly, as much as time allows at the
Yeah,
moment.
of course.
But it's a real kind of passion of mine. But I guess in terms of kind of where I ended up and fell into the line of work I'm doing now, is in my last 2 years of university, I took a real interest in, I guess, what you'd call the theoretical side of theatre, and the more kind of academic side, and particularly in a brand of theatre called applied theatre, which is looking at how the arts, and for me, how drama specifically can go into communities and make a real difference for those communities, and hopefully kind of cause positive change and be a catalyst for improving kind of outcomes for communities. And I took a real interest in this and started kind of volunteering on projects or setting up projects. We were kind of working with the homeless community or working with children who had been removed from mainstream school because of additional needs, and maybe needed that additional support. So we're going to specialist schools and looked at how could we use drama to improve outcomes for kind of vulnerable people, because I
Mhm.
think it's a real, anyone who's been in the kind of performance industry or has been in the arts, I think understands that how much it can bring people together. I think,
Absolutely.
again, much like the voluntary sector, it brings a real kind of eclectic mix of people who have loads of different interests from loads of different walks of life. And that's the bit that really interested me, is how could we use this really positive tool that brings people together to go into communities and make things better for them, or kind of be a catalyst for positive change. So that's, like, I guess, is where my interest sort of peaked in
Mhm.
working in this sort of work. And then one thing led to another, and I did a lot of volunteering on different projects. I worked kind of in schools and doing workshops in schools around Devon, which is where I went to university, at Exeter University. And then in my final year of university, I volunteered for a project called Summer Adventures, which was working with young carers, and that was kind of my first experience working with young carers. So
Mhm.
I'd done loads of kind of volunteering at uni at different projects, but this one is one that really kind of had a profound effect on me, I guess, and really more than any community that I'd worked with before, I really kind of felt like I wanted to kind of do something kind of permanent here. I wanted to kind of go on and work with young carers and see if that what kind of opportunities were out there. And I was very lucky that the project I worked on and volunteered on, the organisation who worked with the university in setting it up, actually had some vacancies kind of shortly after the project. So applied for a role. At that point, it was a support worker role, which was kind of dedicated towards supporting people, young carers, emotionally, and providing respite and activity opportunities for young carers. So applied for that role, and generally kind of haven't looked back since. So that was in, how long ago was that now? That was just over 4 years ago, pushing 5 years now, and that was down in Devon. So originally I worked for a period of maybe 3.5 years with Devon Young Carers
Mhm.
in various different roles, supporting young carers across Devon, and loved every minute of it. Really, really rewarding. I've learned a lot to kind of bump myself as a professional, as well as kind of young carers. And I think once you spend a bit of time with young carers, and like I said, you learn just how resilient and amazing they are, and with the right type of support, just kind of what difference they can make in the world. Have really had no intention of working with in any other area. So when the opportunity then came to kind of come to Richmond and kind of challenge myself in a new geographical area, but with the same group of young children, it seemed too good to turn down, really. So yeah, it's a bit of a different background. I've got no qualifications in terms of health and social care or anything like that.
Mhm.
But that's what's really lovely about our sector, about the voluntary sector as a whole. Like I said, I think it is, get the opportunity to really kind of work with people that you never would have had the opportunity if you'd gone down other routes. So yeah, it's a really lovely role to do. One that I thoroughly enjoy and feel really privileged to do as well, because I've loved every minute of it.
That's so interesting. The kind of route that you took to end up here, and it's. I was saying to you before that I think everybody that I've spoken to on this series seems to have gone through a similar path where they haven't necessarily thought, this is where I'm going to be in 10 years' time, or this is where I'm going to be in 5 years' time. However, somehow they ended up there, but what seemed or what seems most interesting is that it almost didn't feel like it was planned. It felt like you just sort of went with it and didn't restrict yourself to one thing. And that's how
Mhm.
you ended up discovering the one thing that you are really enjoying. Because if you had just said yourself, no, I just want to stick to theatre or stick
Mhm.
to applied theatre and only do this, and kind of, decided that strongly that that's what you want to do, you may have never stumbled upon this.
Of course, yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I think kind of I feel incredibly lucky to have spent the time I did, kind of having that passion for theatre and drama, and still to this day do, because I think it's kind of made me uniquely qualified for the work I do as well. And I think you know as well, Beatrice. I think you have to have that ability to kind of communicate effectively with
Absolutely.
lots of people when you're in when you're doing drama and you're doing performance. And I think that's kind of helped me kind of learn how to kind of communicate with people, which is a really important part of our job. Ultimately our role is dedicated towards people and young people, and it's really important to know how to communicate with them, how to be personal, how to be empathetic and make sure we understand where they're coming from, and often kind of manage those kind of competing priorities, or finding that balance of what's kind of right and what they want, and what's best for them. And I think kind of drama helped me with that. It helped me to kind of be confident when speaking to people, and kind of overcome challenges, because it throws things at you, right? When you're doing a performance, things can
Yeah.
come really, really unexpectedly, often from out of nowhere. And you have to kind of problem solve. You have to think quickly on your feet. You have to kind of make sure that you're overcoming those challenges. So it's much like the work I do now. It's kind of what I love most about it is no one day is the same quite often. Things often kind of come up, and you have to problem solve. You have to work as a team, and you have to work together to make sure you're doing and giving the best type of support to a group of children who are relying on you for that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. I feel incredibly lucky for that, but I think it's also kind of, I guess, kind of made me uniquely qualified to do the job I do. And that's what's really nice about it. I think what, like you said, I had no kind of 5 or 10 year plan as such, and
Yeah.
I never kind of knew. I just knew that I loved doing theatre, and I knew from a young age, I guess, that wherever I did, I wanted to make sure that I loved doing it. It didn't matter, kind of money is one thing, and all those kind of things, all those worries you don't have maybe when you're younger. One thing that was kind of consistent through it all is I wanted to make sure that I really enjoy, and I'm passionate about whatever kind of I go into. So at one stage that was performance and theatre, and that kind of changed along the way, and that was absolutely fine, because I had something that was kind of drawing me to this kind of work, and I knew that this is what I wanted to do. But there was no kind of grand plan from a young age. It
And
wasn't until my early 20s that I even sort of, I guess, had any idea about this even existing. So yeah, it's a really nice kind of route in, and like you said, I'm sure kind of lots of people have the same experience, because we quite often have no idea what we want to do when we're younger.
yes.
Mhm.
And I wanted to add that I think it's so important for young people who are watching and listening now to understand that it's okay. Yes, it's good to have an idea of what you want to
Mhm.
do. It's good to have some goals. It's good to have some aspirations. Absolutely. But it's also okay not to know what you
Mhm.
want to do. It's also okay not to have the 10, 15-year plan, whatever it is.
Of course, yeah.
It's okay to have more passions and more things
Mhm.
that you're interested in, and try to find a way to bring them together as well. I think that's also extraordinary. And I think, as you said, particularly for the role that you're in now, I feel that your drama training, from everything that you've described, has definitely helped. And I
Mm.
think doing something like drama or anything artistic in general can be a very good starting point for a lot of career paths, or
Mm.
a lot of positions or jobs that you can enter later on in life, because I think it provides you with a really unique set of skills, especially when it comes to relating to people and working with people
Mm.
and for people. I think that's yeah,
Absolutely.
it's really, really, really interesting how much it can actually help outside of the actual performing arts
Of
field.
course, yeah. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of pressure put on young people from a young age. Right? I remember myself feeling that as well. That every decision I make along the way is going to kind of decide the rest of my life. And look, it does to a certain respect. And obviously, it's kind of important that you kind of consider those options, and you really take time to kind of work out what it is you want to do next. But just because you've chosen to do whatever it is you want to do next doesn't mean along the way you're not going to kind of find something else and find a different passion or find
Absolutely.
something else you love. And it's okay to change your mind as well. You don't have to kind of commit to something and then you're stuck there for the rest of your life. Actually, it's okay to kind of take different routes. And the really nice thing, and I think something I've learned as I've got a little bit older, is that there's lots of transferable skills where you will kind of do whatever
Yes.
job you're doing, you will pick up skills that will always be relevant and always kind of help you in completely different roles and actually take you in some of the kind of stranger directions. But even if that direction doesn't seem like it was your original plan, if it's something you love doing and if it's something you're passionate about, I would always kind of say that's the biggest advice I give is kind of go for it. Do what you love doing, find whatever it is that makes you want to kind of get up out of bed in the morning or really gets you excited about kind of what you're going to do that day and go for it because it's okay to change your mind. And
Yeah.
if the decision you made yesterday doesn't quite fit today, then that's absolutely fine as well.
I agree. I agree completely. And that brings me actually to my next question. For any young people that are watching that may be interested, sorry, in caring as a career, um, do you have any sort of tips or starting points? Or they may be interested not directly in working as a carer, but
Mhm,
working in the voluntary sector as
mhm,
yourself. So is there anything that you could, any directions
mhm.
you can point them in?
Yeah, of course, it's really interesting. I would always kind of, if that's something that someone wants to go into, like I said, I think I've kind of made my feelings known. I think it's a wonderful sector to work in. It's really, really rewarding, and you get to work with a lovely kind of group of people who generally are all working to kind of make things better or to kind of support people who need that support. I guess the biggest advice I would give is kind of make sure you get a really varied experience. I think the biggest thing I enjoyed when I was first getting into kind of working with, I guess, communities who needed, or vulnerable communities who needed additional support, is I didn't want to just kind of spend time with one community. Obviously, eventually I fell into young carers, and that's where I maybe found my passion. But I think I'd really recommend that get out there and support different communities, have different experiences, do volunteering. Volunteering is, although it's not paid, and I think sometimes maybe it can be looked down on a little bit, I think it gives you really, really valued experience in kind of getting to know kind of what skill set is required for working in the voluntary sector. I think make sure you kind of have that experience of working with different communities who need support, because then what you'll find is you'll find your area that you are really passionate about and the area that really kind of makes you go, okay, this is where I really want to make a difference. Like I said, I had experience of working in schools, I had experience of working with the homeless community, eventually kind of found my way working with young carers. But it was important that I had those experiences to kind of set me up and give me that skill set to know, okay, this is where I kind of want to focus now, and this is where I want to kind of move forward. So that was the biggest advice I give really is get a really varied experience, because then you understand people as well. Because even while I work with young carers, like I said, it's a very people person job. And we have to work with families and we have to work with professionals who sometimes have kind of competing priorities to ours. And it's really important that we're able to kind of get on the same page, no matter who we're communicating with. We should always be working towards the same goal, which is to improve outcomes for vulnerable people who need that support. And it's really
Mhm.
important that you get that experience so you can understand people from all different walks of life, because you will always, no matter what area I guess you focus in on and eventually move forward with, you will always come into contact with people from very different backgrounds who have very different experiences to yours. And it's important that you're able to kind of understand where they're coming from and understand what they want from you as much as what you need from them, because then
Yeah.
you're always able to hopefully sort of meet halfway and kind of achieve a positive outcome as well.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense. And so then for somebody who may be interested particularly in caring, then I'm
Mm.
guess the more sort of traditional route
Mhm.
would be to go and do some sort of courses and some
Of
training,
course.
start looking into getting some qualifications so that you may afterwards go and get a job in this field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's making sure that you gain that experience that you think you need. You may think, even at a young age that, I'd really love to do this, but actually I'm a little bit unsure about that element of caring, or I'd like to learn a little bit more about certain aspects of the job. And the only way you can do that is to kind of get out there and gain that experience. So look at what courses are going to give you the experience you want. Look at what qualifications are going to best set you up to kind of move into that industry. but also kind of be mindful, like I said, that there's so many skills are transferable as well. So don't pigeonhole yourself. Make sure, get out there, have different experiences, volunteer with different organizations. I think, I do a lot of recruitment for our team as well. So kind of going through interview processes, and what we're always looking for is people who have, I guess, been willing to kind of put themselves out there and work with people from lots and lots of different kind of walks of life. I've really gained kind of valuable experience alongside doing the training and the qualifications, which give you that sort of, I guess, theoretical know-how. But it's
Yeah.
also really, really important to have that direct experience of working with people, because the training is one thing, putting it into action then is a completely different thing. So make sure you do both alongside each other and give yourself every opportunity to kind of experience as much as possible, because it will set you up kind of better when you are looking then to move into it as a profession.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
No problem.
And this brings me to my last question,
Mhm.
which is, do you have any advice for young carers or young people who may be carers, unpaid carers,
Mhm.
but not really identify as that? Maybe somebody's watching who's thinking, actually, this sounds like me, or this sounds like my mate, this
Mhm.
sounds like, a family member. How could they, once they kind of think that it's, what we're talking about
Mhm.
is similar to their situation, how can they access support, or what's the easiest way to access support?
Of course, yeah. I think the biggest message I would give to any young carer who's potentially watching, or if anyone's aware of maybe someone they're close to who may be a carer, is actually you aren't alone. I know a lot of young carers and a lot of unpaid carers feel like they're kind of coping and dealing with everything on their own, but actually there are lots of organizations out there who are dedicated towards supporting you to achieve the best possible outcomes for yourself. In terms of accessing that support, speak to a teacher, speak to a parent, speak to a family member, have a look online. We have our website. You can go to the local authority. There are loads of different avenues you can go down to kind of accessing that support. Obviously in our area it would work one way. What I would do is speak to a professional, whether it's a teacher or someone you trust, someone you care about, and someone who is kind of going to respond positively to you, and just kind of explain, actually, I think I might be a carer, can you point me in the right direction into kind of accessing that support? Or you can come directly to services like ours, do a little quick internet search wherever you live in. If you live in Richmond, if you search Young Carers Richmond, our website will be the first to come up. So if you maybe haven't identified yourself as a carer before, or an unpaid carer, but now maybe as a result of this conversation or something else you've heard, that you do maybe recognize that maybe yourself, then yeah, a quick search online or go to someone you trust, and quite quickly, hopefully you'll be able to identify that in most areas there are young carer services who are looking to kind of support you achieve the best possible outcomes in life. So just, yeah, give us a call, ask for help, and we'll always do our best.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for
No
that, Tom.
problem.
Is there anything that you'd like to add that you think that we haven't covered in our conversation so far?
Nothing specifically, I guess. I'd like to thank you, Beatrice, really for the opportunity. I think, like I said, a lot of the work we do is around awareness raising and kind of increasing that knowledge of what life is like as a young carer or an unpaid carer of any age, because quite often they go hidden or not identified. So any opportunity like this that allows us to kind of come and talk about what I do in this case, or what we do as an organization, is really important, and really helps kind of get that message out, and really kind of speaks hopefully to young carers who are looking for that support. So just a big thank you from me to you, really, for the opportunity, and is all I'd like to add.
And thank you for agreeing to chat with me and to so generously share your time with me. I'm very grateful, and I do really hope that our conversation, getting it out there on the internet, will hopefully bring some awareness and maybe point some people in the right direction, so they may, get
Mhm.
some support and help that they need, but also, open young people's minds, I think, in the sense of, this is a very interesting avenue that you can go down on. This is a
Mhm.
career path that you may be interested in, and you never thought, working in the voluntary sector. What is that? Well, now you know a little bit about it, and you've got a starting point at least. So I'm hoping that there are, and I think there are a few very good takeaways from our conversation today. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks very much. And again, much like I was saying with the young care stuff, I think kind of any opportunity to kind of, I guess, give people a look into, like you said, whether it's the voluntary sector or whether it's any of the previous speakers you've talked to as well. I think, like we said, it's really important, that message of it's okay to kind of change your mind, and it's okay to kind of find your way as you're going along. So, no, I've loved watching your previous interviews as well. So well done to you, really, for getting that message out there. So yeah,
thank you very much.
The only other thing I'd like to add.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's much appreciated. Thank you for watching them as well.
No problem.
I really do appreciate it. Okay, well, so we have come to the end now, so I will have to let you go. But again, I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
And we've come to the end of today's episode. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope there are a few takeaways from today's video. And remember, if you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and even share it with somebody who may find it interesting or inspiring. And if you'd like to keep up with our content, then do go over to our channel and hit that notification bell too. I'll see you next time.